For every Steve Jobs, there's a Tim Cook. You have your visionary and you have your operators, but what really puts great operators and visionaries together is great systems and great strategies with that. So let's dig into how do you, if you're a visionary, put in accountability and systems in place? And also, if you're an operator, how do you hold those visionaries accountable? Yeah, let's talk about that.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show.
Oh, hey there, folks. Welcome to today's episode of The Brian Nichols Show. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you from our lovely Cardio here studios here in sunny Eastern Indiana. Actually, it's not that sunny today. We're preparing for Snowmageddon as we record here today. But hey, no worries. If that's getting your heart a little stressed, go ahead, scan this little QR code over my shoulder. It'll bring you to cardiomiracle.com, where you can find the best heart health supplement in the world. And I mean that because I know it. I use it every single day, morning and night. I've been taking it now for 2 years, and I've seen the Cardio Miracle benefits myself. Better sleep, better blood pressure, a better pump at the gym, lower resting heart rate, better cardio. So I'm seeing the difference, and I know I feel the difference. I want you to feel the difference too. Go ahead, scan that little QR code over my shoulder. It's going to bring you to cardiomiracle.com, and you'll know you're at the right spot. You're going to see a little notice at the top of the screen, and it's going to say you're shopping with Brian Nichols. Scroll down, you'll see a little testimonial video I shot over to Cardio Miracle. Or if you're an audio listener, just go to cardiomiracle.com/TBNS. That stands for The Brian Nichols Show. And again, folks, you're going to get 15% off your order if you do go ahead and place your order over at Cardio Miracle using our discount code. So it helps the show, and it's going to help your heart. So one more time, cardiomiracle.com, the best heart health supplement in the world. All right. So if you are in the entrepreneur space, you know, right? You're stressed all the time. Maybe you need some Cardio Miracle because you're constantly up late nights trying to plan, right? Trying to think long term, even short term. What's the best course of action to get tangible, positive results? And sometimes what happens is, as a visionary, as an entrepreneur, we end up just having almost great idea after great idea where we never really focus on those ideas and execute. And that's where the operators come in handy. If you look at the stories of Apple, for example, you have your Steve Jobs of the world, but behind the scenes, you have your Tim Cooks. And what they're doing as operators is also putting systems in place, not just from an operations standpoint, but truly making sure that there's accountability and making sure that there's systems in place to make sure everybody's on the same page. So if you're in the entrepreneur space and you're kind of looking at yourself saying, kind of sounds like me. Maybe I'm the visionary and I need some systems. How do we do that? Joining us here to discuss all that and more from Derr Consulting is Forrest Derr. Forrest, welcome to the Brian Nichols Show. How you doing?
I'm happy to be here, and I'm not worried about Snowmageddon. It's just going to get to 25 degrees with no precipitation. So we're good.
Yeah, and that's not a joke, by the way, folks. For some video watchers might be saying, Forrest? Tom Segura? No, this is Forrest, and he's not telling a joke, right? No, it is Snowmageddon, as we're preparing here for where I am in Indiana. I know that the Midwest, they're hunkering down. I saw this one post from my home or my county here in Indiana where somebody had 4 of those big Rubbermaid containers in the back of their car, filling it up with gas, which that's super safe. But yeah, we're not talking about snow today. We're talking about operations, systems, strategic alignment, all that and more. But before we do that, Forrest, do us a favor. Introduce yourself here to the Brian Nichols Show audience and give us a little bit more of the background in terms of how you kind of found yourself helping coach folks and putting systems in place to help lead to positive success.
Yeah, I appreciate that awesome intro. So I'm a kindred spirit of yours. I used to work in the telecom space. So I worked at a company for 8.5 years as president of the company where I was second in command. So we had a visionary CEO and I was the second in command, and I was in charge of putting the systems and structure in place to make that company operate and scale effectively. Then decided to leave that company and of all places went to a landscape company. And no, that's not a joke. I actually worked at a landscaping company for about 15 months, helped that company scale as well. But one of the reasons I did that is they had a CrossFit gym and a jiu-jitsu gym that also needed some help. So I was able to work in 3 businesses simultaneously, helping those businesses scale and grow, which led me to the point where I was decided, you know what, I need to jump out and do this for more than 1 or 2 companies at a time. So now I'm working with, I think, about 10 different companies at the moment in various capacities in a fractional COO style role for that second in command for those founders who are struggling to scale without systems.
So, Forrest, one of the things when I'm talking to startup companies or entrepreneurs is that they have a lot of great ideas, right? And I say this as someone, I dare say I have a lot of great ideas, right? But then the problem I find is actually executing, right? It's almost like I chase great idea after great idea at times. Yep. And I have a good buddy of mine. He and I work together, and he is very much in that more operations system mindset. And I found that it's really helped me to have someone who is good at putting systems in place or putting processes in place, because it takes my good idea and it actually makes it tangible. So just talk to us a little bit more about when you're talking to entrepreneurs or visionaries, right? Like, what are some of those main pain points you're hearing, and kind of how are you approaching it and addressing them?
Yeah, the squirrel chasing, the ADHD squirrel shiny object is definitely a real thing for
shiny object syndrome. Oh, I hate it.
That's right. But it's what makes you visionaries great. And, we need visionaries that have fresh ideas and are constantly thinking about things. But the challenge that most visionaries, especially founder-led visionaries, end up with is they walk through the office and share their ideas with everybody in the company, which then confuses everybody because the priorities change every week, if not every day. And so as a second in command, one of the things that I do is bring clarity to what the actual vision is, and then hold that visionary accountable to where are we going. We decided we were going down this path. We chart that path. Can we deviate from it? Sure. But we really can't keep changing direction every single week or every single day. And so I'm the filter for those visionaries to throw ideas at. Let's talk through it. Let's validate it. Let's figure out if it has, some runway to work, and then clarify it and create a consistent message for the team before we execute, before we launch a new business.
Yeah. And like just being on the same page, right? Yeah. Like that is so crucial, both for the startups, but also for those bigger orgs. And I see this quite a bit where in our space, you mentioned we're in the telco space. Like that world, I see a lot with the bigger vendors, right? Especially in the UCaaS and CCaaS space. You'll kind of have like almost it's like three different narratives coming from the same company at any given time. Yeah. And it's actually it's really confusing for customers because they don't really know where you fit. Right. And as a company, that actually puts you in a lot of risk, because I want to be the slam dunk company for X. So like my company that I work for in my day job, we are a slam dunk company for small and medium sized businesses who need rock solid business voice. Right. That is our niche. We crush it in that space. And we're proud of that. Like 500 to 500 users, bring it to us all day long. My competition, they won't even look at a deal until it's 500 users or above. So it's like, yeah, we're going to double down on where we win and why. But if we all of a sudden, like if my CEO tomorrow was like, you know what, we're going to compete with Ring Central, right? And all of a sudden we're going upstream trying to compete in like this Fortune 500, Fortune 100 space, like goodness gracious, it's going to be like a dog chasing its tail, right? And for me, as somebody in the channel trying to get new sales, I would be overwhelmed, because now I'm trying to like reposition our value prop to a market that we're just not fit for. Now, that's to say right there, that's a real life kind of example of what could happen if you have a visionary who's constantly chasing the shiny object. So I guess that it comes down to, well, Forrest, which shiny object is the one that you should chase? Because of all the ones that are out there, it's like, well, I know at least one of them should be a little nugget of success. So how do you kind of determine, as an operator or as someone who's building these systems, when you're working with these visionaries and these entrepreneurs, they have all these great ideas, how do you narrow it down to where you want to actually start?
Yeah, we need to spend time in what is that ideal market, and where do we have relationships?
Yeah.
One of the things I see consistently, I had a visionary recently I was working with, and he had 6 different businesses, 6 different business units. And it was like, he had an idea, I'll just start a new business. And that creates incredible chaos if you don't know who your client base is and really who your ideal client market is. So when I'm working with a visionary and they may have another idea for some other, either another business or just even another service line, I say, let's take a look at what our current user base is, our current client base is, because let's sell into that ideal client that we already have, rather than going and trying to find a new client. Because why chase a brand new client when you've got a captive audience in the existing clients? Yep. So it's a cross-sell, upsell. If there is another service that tangentially will go along or parallel will go along with the existing client base, let's go sell into them. You've got their contact information, you've got their relationship, you've got an understanding of who the decision makers are. Let's go that direction rather than creating a whole nother business unit and then trying to build the customer base from scratch.
If you operate a multi-location business like restaurants, retail stores, grocery chains, or franchises, managing phones across locations should not be complicated. But for many operators, it is. Inconsistent systems, confusing bills, and vendors who disappear when problems show up. Level 365 simplifies business communications across every location with centralized control, reliable performance, and real human support. No long-term lock-ins, no surprise fees, just a phone system that scales without the headaches. Learn more at level365.com.
And I see this all the time, right? Like I do a lot of consulting with like these small and medium businesses who are, they're just looking to kind of redo their go-to-market, and they're in like completely random industries. I mean, it could be like woodworking, right? Like stuff like that. Yeah. And I'll sit down and I'll talk to them. And one of the things when I ask them, I'm like, who's your ideal customer? And Forrest, I get that deer in the headlights look.
They don't
right?
know.
They're like,
they don't know. Yeah, I see the same thing over and over again. And I'm talking companies 14, 15, even $20 million in annual revenue. And I'm like, you don't even know who your ideal client. How do your salespeople know who to target? How does your marketing team know where to spend time? It's just spray and pray. Yep. And I tell people, these founders, they've been successful in spite of themselves. They've been successful with the brute force. And that's where that second in command comes in to really clarify the messaging, clarify the product, clarify the target market, and clarify where everybody needs to spend their time instead of just chasing every rabbit that comes across their desk.
One thing I do want to talk about as well, because there are the visionaries of the world, right, where they just have a very big picture idea and perspective on something. Yeah. But then there's kind of like these inventors, right? Like they build a cool product, and they're pardon the expression, but they're nerdy to the extent they're really fascinated about the thing versus the thing it does, like what the outcome it accomplishes. And there's a gentleman I was asked to come do a speaking gig for. He has this networking group. It's a bunch of inventors, and I think they're all mostly a Midwest Kentucky based. I think it's mostly Kentucky based inventors. Yeah. And I had hopped in the call, and it was really for the chance for these guys to kind of use me as a sounding board from a sales standpoint. And it was fascinating when I'd be talking to these guys and just asking simple questions of like, well, help me articulate, or rather articulate how you see your product like being used. And it was interesting because some of these guys really never thought that far ahead. They thought of a cool thing to build, but in terms of applications, they really hadn't gone forward with that. And I'm like, well, that's the part where we need to figure out, because you can't just sell the feature and benefit list. You can't sell it like it'd be like selling a car and only selling based on the text and the specs versus like, hey, you have a family of 5, you want the most, safe and luxurious car at the same time. Like, here's the brand new Kia Carnival, like whatever, something like that, right? Versus just talking about, it's got the best 4 wheels, here's your, the titanium alloy, like, okay. And help me understand the outcome. So I say all that when we're talking about some of these kind of, again, the nerdy guys who are building these products and they get stuck in the tech and the spec and the features and benefits, how can you almost help them get out of their own way, right? Like this is the opposite of the visionaries and stuff. They're more focused on like just these good ideas after good ideas. These guys are focused on the one good idea that they built, and just they're enamored with it. So there's almost like a yin and the yang in the persona, same church, but very, very different pew. But how would you approach that type of persona from an inventor kind of startup standpoint?
Well, I've seen it, and you have seen it, obviously, and I think we've been in the communication space long enough. When the IoT started coming out, when of course it was something else before IoT, but then IoT, it's kind of like, let's change the name to IoT, and then it's more sexy. Kind of like everything automation is now AI, but it really is just automation.
By the way, IoT is Internet of Things for folks who are curious out there, and playing along in the home game.
I remember going to trade shows when that was really coming on the scene, and I describe it as there were people that had invented solutions and they were looking for a problem.
Yep. Oh, 100%. Yes.
They invented a solution looking for a problem. They hadn't figured out what the problem is, but they've got this really cool solution. They just don't know where to apply it. Yep. So unfortunately, a lot of times it's giving them a dose of reality. this is great, this is cool, but there's no application. There's not a way to apply it. There's not a way to monetize it. So unfortunately, I have to deal a lot of reality doses to people. I'm going, this is really neat, but there's no way to apply this to make money. It's a side project. It's a pet project. Then there are other solutions that really do apply to problems, but you got to figure out how to apply it and how to market it, and then how to communicate it. So in those instances, I'm going to work with that founder that is the nerd founder, as you said, that has this solution, but how do we back into create a structure to market it as an outcome? You're 100% right. When people go into the hardware store to buy a nail to hang a picture on the wall, they're not buying the nail. They're buying the outcome of the picture on the wall. And so you got to reframe what that solution is and put it in a context that will help. Now, I'm not a marketing genius. I'm not even a marketing expert. I'm a generalist. And one of the things that I do is just call in experts. So I'll bring in a fractional chief marketing officer or a chief product officer or some other type of fractional executive to help them work through that process.
One of the things I just want to go back to, using the hammer, nail, hanging picture analogy, right, is think about command hooks, right? Or command strips, the Velcro ones. I use those all the time, right? Those accomplish the same outcome as a hammer and nail, right? But they do it in a fundamentally different way.
Yep.
And you're still getting the same outcome, more or less, but then it comes down to, well, what are you like the details, right? Do you want the nail to be there permanently?
Right.
Or are you a renter, right? Or do you need this temporary? Or are, like in my case here, folks, you want to know a sneak peek here. We're going to zoom out here. That picture over my shoulder, believe it or not, I can swap that out. I have my sign here. That's a Velcro strip. So I can just like pop that on and off as I want to, right?
Yeah.
So like, it accomplishes the same thing, but functionally there's a different use case. And this is something too, like operators almost got to, or not operate, I'm sorry, the nerdy visionaries, they need to get it almost out of their way in like, and by the way, just to make a very small pivot towards politics here. I see this a lot in the Libertarian Party politics, where I used to spend some time back in the day, where they almost are so infatuated with whatever ideas they have that they forget it doesn't matter how good and right you think this is and how it's going to be utilized until you apply it to the real world. And that part gets missed. Like, you as an inventor, you might see like, this is how I envision this being used. And then all of a sudden you're seeing it completely used in a different way, in a completely different outcome than you even thought of, but it's getting more application and use there. Like we see this with like petroleum based stuff, where all of a sudden they're like, hey, there's a what was it? It was like the petroleum jelly, and they turn it into Vaseline, right? Like somebody saw there's a use case for this. Like I know my dad used to be a farmer, and they would use petroleum jelly or Vaseline for like the udders on cows and stuff. Like for it was called Bag Bomb. Like there's an iteration of it. So like there's stuff like this where you go from like, I have a vision for this, like petroleum fuel, right? Like, and all of a sudden now there's a byproduct of that we're using in completely different worlds. And if you were to tell somebody, hey, this is made from gasoline, right? I mean, obviously being tongue in cheek, they'd be like, what? But like, it's true. That's how it works. But anyways, I'll get off that kind of rant. Forrest, I want you to, as we're kind of going towards the back end of the conversation here, let's talk more about like actually looking at what good looks like. And this is where I think a lot of folks in the business space, they do get stuck. They have an idea. And I talked about this on another show I do called CX Without the BS. I had Justin Jones on the show. He's from Sonic CX. And they were talking about the idea of KPIs almost being a detriment to some companies. Because if you're a business and you put this KPI in place and you're always chasing this KPI without the context, not only of why, but truly measuring it from an outcomes-based standpoint, you could be chasing a KPI that's actually hurting you. So I guess, for some of these folks, like, they don't know what good looks like because they might be basing good on arbitrary standards that they themselves built. So when you're working with an organization, how are you putting those standards in place so they can actually look and say, okay, I started here and we got to here, and I can actually see a tangible, objective, positive difference from where we started to where we are today?
So I have a different spin on that.
Okay.
With respect to KPIs. So, there's result KPIs, and then there are activity-based KPIs. And so one of the things that I do with clients is really help them develop KPIs that are focused on the activity that ends up in the result. It's not how many deals you closed last week. It's how many calls did you make. It's how many appointments that you set. And so building KPIs that are activity-based that will end up in the result based off the calculations, that's where you can really drive behavior and drive change in an organization. If you give every single person in the company at least one KPI that they have control over, then they can tell themselves, and they don't need the pat on the back to know whether they had a good week. And so building out that structure, not results-based, but more activity-based, that will get you to the results. If you have a 50% closing ratio, you got to propose double the amount that you want to get to that 50% closing ratio. So again, KPIs are great. People chase too many of them, and that is another issue that I see in a lot of organizations. I'll open up their scorecard and they've got 100 items on it, and I'm like, how are you focusing on this? Your KPIs for an individual team should be like the dashboard of a car.
Right.
You got a speedometer, you got an odometer, you got a battery gauge, you got fuel. 5 or 6, maybe 7 things that are helping you steer that truck, that vehicle, that business to make sure it stays out of the ditch. So everybody loves data. I love me some data too, but it's too much sometimes where they just chase all these numbers that, like you say, are arbitrary based off some industry standard that really may not apply to your business model.
Everybody who listens to the show knows that I'm a proud, but also I'm a worn down Cowboys fan, right? And we just fired our defensive coordinator from this past season. Thank God, because Matt Eberflus was one of the worst, literally the worst defensive coordinators in Cowboys history and in NFL history in terms of yards allowed. But let's not go into that conversation. But we fired him, and we hired a new defensive coordinator from the Eagles. His name is Christian Parker. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and one of the things they said, Forrest, in describing the difference between Matt Eberflus and Christian Parker is that Matt Eberflus had this knack of taking simple concepts and making them very difficult to understand. Whereas Christian Parker has this ability to take sometimes difficult and complex things and make them super simple and easy to understand and implement. Yeah. And to see the fundamental switch kind of in that approach, for me as a Cowboys fan, it gets me a little excited, right? Because now I'm like, okay, well, one of the biggest issues that we had last year was the defense not knowing what was going on. You could see it on the field. Like there was one play where Malik Hooker, who's the safety for the Cowboys, and then former cornerback for the Cowboys, Trayvon Diggs, the play is about to be snapped. Like you can see the offense is about to snap the ball, and literally a second or two before, they're yelling at each other. He's like, you have to cover that guy. And just the fact that, and this was like week 14 for us. And I'm just like, oh my Lord, like, come on guys, we have to be able to communicate and actually know what's going on. And the only thing that fundamentally changed from 2 years ago when we had Dan Quinn and we're doing really well at defense to now having Matt Eberflus was coaching. And it is amazing when you just make those little tweaks. And then let's bring this to seeing it done right. We just watched Curt Cignetti and IU go from a 3-9 program 2 years ago to going undefeated this past year in college football and winning the national championship, doing it the right way. And there's a quote that Cignetti had where he's like, hey, you know what? Do we have 8 guys on our team who are going to get drafted this year? Probably not. But we had the best team. And the best team is the team that's all doing things on the same page. They're marching to the same beat of the same drum. Yeah. They're all looking at the same playbook. And that right there, that is a system, right? Cignetti went from one system to another system, and he had success march with him because he had frameworks, he had playbooks, he had a system in place. So with that being said, talk to us about systems. Like, what are some of the go-to systems that you see really help entrepreneurs go from 0 to 100 when you're going through and consulting, and maybe just some quick takeaways that folks who are listening today could implement overnight and hopefully see some positive change?
I love taking complicated and making it simple. That is, visionaries have a habit of overcomplicating things because they're passionate about it and they want a 45-page playbook with 17 bullet points on each page. And you cannot repeat those processes if they're not simplified. So I work in the EOS framework. So a lot of the clients I work with have implemented EOS. There's a book called Traction. If you don't know about it, read that book. That'll get you up to speed on it. And in those organizations that are running on EOS, the whole process of running in that operating system is to simplify your business. One of the questions I ask people, entrepreneurs, I'm having coffee with them, like, do you have a business plan? And they say, oh yeah, absolutely. Well, where is it? Well, I think it's on SharePoint. When was the last time you looked at it? I don't know, a couple of years ago. How many pages is it? 300? I don't know. It was a Word doc I downloaded. EOS, one of their processes they take you through is to implement a 2-page business plan. 2 pages, covers everything. And that simplification gets everybody marching in the right direction and everybody understanding what is the ultimate goal and who plays each part on that team to be successful. So founders, they need to have some type of system. If they don't have a system, a business operating system, not software, a business operating system, then they cannot. Well, I'm not going to say they cannot. It would be very difficult for them to scale and be successful because the business is so complex, so many moving parts. And I walk into organizations, even as small as 10 or 15 people, and will ask them who they report to. And I'll get different answers from each individual on who they think they report to versus who their boss is. Simplification, consistency. It worked at Indiana. It'll work in a business.
If you're focused on long-term health but tired of overcomplicated wellness trends, you already know the frustration. Too many products promise miracles and deliver chaos. Cardio Miracle keeps it simple. It supports nitric oxide and blood flow, foundational elements of heart health, stamina, and overall performance. That means better energy, better workouts, and better recovery, without forcing your body into extremes. If you want health support that actually makes sense, and to get 15% off your order, visit cardiomiracle.com/TBNS to learn more.
Sorry, my camera decided to freeze there for a second. Forrest, this has been truly one of my favorite conversations, because when we're talking about taking, again, complex ideas or complex solutions and bringing it to your average buyer, there is this need, and we go back to, and this will be my final thoughts for today before I turn it over to you. The whole ethos of this show has been to meet people where they're at, right, on the issues they care about. And the problem I see for a lot of business owners, for a lot of these go-to-market teams, and by the way, it's just parallel world in the world of politics, because it is sales, right? When you're in the world of politics, you are selling yourself, your ideas, your platform. Like, at the end of the day, you have to be able to meet your voter, meet your customer where they are, but in a language, in a way that they understand. They can easily see what you do, get it, right? They understand your value prop. But the other part, and this sometimes is the hardest part, is that you have to stand out and differentiate. It's not a matter always of what you do, but how you do it, how you make people feel, what positive stories you can tell. And by the way, I'll finish with a story. Like, I'm seeing this right now in my day job. For folks who've been paying attention here for a little bit, I recently, for my company, we got into what's called a TSD channel, which is a technology service distributor. Mm-hmm. And we're competing with literally 90 other vendors who are doing the same thing we are, right? It's business phones, business voice. And when we're going out and we're competing, we're getting opportunities, right? We're over 40 plus opportunities just by the nature this year of us doing things differently, not from a product standpoint, but because we're 100% US-based support. We're a live answer with a real human being who can solve your problem, and they're not overseas in India in under 10 seconds, right? We're month-to-month contracts, so you don't have to worry about getting locked into a 3-year contract and then have to worry about, if you ever want to leave, early termination fees, right? We're hyper transparent in our quoting process. We go through, we tell a customer not only what they're going to pay, but that first invoice they get, it's not going to be a 30 to 40% jump with taxes, fees, and surcharges. It's actually going to be what we showed them, right? Yeah. So all that's not product based, right? That's just how we do stuff. And the fact that that has been landing so much speaks to again, it doesn't matter always how sexy the thing is that you sell, how, feature rich, or, how cool the tech is behind the scenes. What matters is that you're able to tell a really compelling story. You're able to help people see the positive, outcome, and you make it tangible. You make it real. And by the way, just going back to the world of politics, this is why so many, especially in my former world of like more libertarian friend politics, where they fail, because you can't paint a picture of a utopia when it's not real. You can't functionally get there. And by the way, this is why for friends on the left, right, we pick on communists. They're like, well, on paper it would work. I'm like, yeah, a lot of things work on paper. I'm the richest man in the world on paper. I would love that. Let's do that. But that's not how real life works. And I think you do have to, when you're reaching out to folks as a business owner, as a sales team, as a go-to-market team, you have to understand, like, what is it that my customers are actually using my product for? It might not be the way you thought. Like Q-tips, they tell you not to put it in your ears. But you know what? I always find it in the shopping aisle right next to the ear products. So you tell me what's going on there, Q-tip brand. But anyways, that's my final thoughts for today. Forrest, bring us home. What would you like the audience to take away from today's conversation?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, like we've already talked about, is simplify your business, simplify your offering, and build systems that are repeatable, that everybody can understand, and make sure that vision is clear so that the whole team, if you imagine a crew boat, where a rowing crew is rowing down a river, they all have to know the sequence, their part, their role, and the cadence that they need to row to keep that boat going in the right direction. So make sure that vision is clear and crystal to everybody, and everybody understands what their role is.
All right, Forrest, we are going to go ahead and put a pin in today's conversation. I've had a lot of fun, and I want folks who are listening to today's conversation, be able to reach out to you, learn more. And I know you have Derr Consulting. So I'm sure folks who are in the business space are saying, hey, I think this guy might be able to help us out some. So hit us with the deets. Where can folks go ahead, reach out to you, learn more, and hopefully recruit your services?
That'd be great. Go to derrconsulting.com, DERR consulting.com, or you can hit me up on LinkedIn. That's where I spend most of my time. If you look for Forrest Derr, there's only one of us out there. So
there you go. And he's not Tom Segura. He's not Tom Segura.
Not yet.
Stop asking him to do a funny joke. It's like that scene in Wedding Crashers where the kid's like, "Make me a clown, funny man." He's like, "Why are you yelling at me?" That's I imagine you at every restaurant. You're just like, "Please let me eat in peace." But Forrest, this has been a great chat. I really enjoyed today's conversation, and folks, I know you did as well. So do me a favor, go ahead, give today's episode a share. When you do, tag yours truly on X, Facebook, and Instagram at B Nichols Liberty. Or if you're watching this over on LinkedIn, say hello. Give today's episode a like and a comment. Let Forrest know, and tag him, by the way, down below, that you enjoyed his appearance here on the Brian Nichols Show. I'm probably going to co-air this, by the way, over on CX Without the BS. So you'll be seeing it over there as well. But folks, if you did enjoy today's episode, you go ahead, when you do give it a share, make sure you're either sharing it the audio link or the video link. Yes, we have both options. So the audio link, you can either go to your favorite podcasting platforms like Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, wherever it may be. Or for video, you can get YouTube, Rumble, LinkedIn, Spotify, all those different video platforms. Just do me a favor. Make sure beforehand, you always hit the subscribe button and hit that little notification bell, because we do have an episode air every Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. We have it air live, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. I guarantee every episode should leave you either educated, enlightened, or informed. My goal, all three. So with that being said, one final plug, please support the folks who support us, and that is folks like our studio sponsors here, Cardio Miracle. They're phenomenal, and again, I've been a big fan of them for a number of years, but I think we're going to go ahead and leave things there. Forrest, any final words for the audience today before we go ahead and say goodbye?
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. My great grandpa used to say that, the keep it simple, stupid method.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a little insulting. It hurt my feelings every time. But with that being said, Brian Nichols signing off here on the Brian Nichols Show for Forrest Derr. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.